G'day listeners, welcome to Bar Karate, the sailing podcast. My name's Jordan Spencer and it's that time of the week where we get to hang out with some really cool sailors, but of course, normally I have to share the mic with my two idiot mates. This week's different. Both BP and Bicey are missing. So before we explain that, I think we'll bring in my guest host and our guest, and then we can dive into what's going on. So what I wanted to do when I realised that BP and Bicey weren't going to be here, so I wanted to come up with a show that was completely unbiased. I didn't want to have it biased towards what my pet interests are, so just bear that in mind. So with that in mind, our guest host is a man who's probably been the second most mentioned man on the whole show. His name is Rob Deussen. He's a former America's Cup tactician, and he's won a stack of events across Australia in Sharpies, in 505s, in Flying Dutchmans, in the Melgers, and now he's currently touching up the Ep167 fleet because he's getting old. And, of course, he and I sailed together for a long time. Fritz, welcome to the show, mate.
Jordan, how you going? I'm embarrassed that you had to stoop as low as me to find someone. But anyway, I thought with ABCD, Deussen, it's actually pronounced Deussen, but doesn't matter. No one would know that. But anyway, thanks for having me.
Okay, Fritz. Well, I can't believe after all these years I still get your last name wrong. I'm such a prick.
Get in line.
All right. Well, let's bring in our guest so we can get this going straight away. So, obviously, without any personal bias, there's one guy I've been wanting to get on the show a long time. Someone I actually consider quite a good friend. I've enjoyed hanging out with him every time we actually spend time together. And you and I, Fritz, have spent a lot of time with this bloke. He's a three-time world champion in the 505 class, just coincidentally. So welcome to the show, Mike Holt.
Thanks, Jordan. Pleasure to be on. Hi, Fritz.
How are you, Holty? Is that shirt you got on every world title you've won? 5 balls, 5 O's. Is that a cap?
Windsurfer. I think it's a windsurfer. Yeah, no, this was just on the Reaver Cup in Lake Garda, so it's this year's shirt from there.
What a bummer we couldn't get there.
Yeah.
We should
Good place. Comes up a lot on the show, Jordan.
What?
Garda.
Oh, Garda. Yeah, we love Garda. Yeah. We should actually do something about where we get to see the best and the worst regatta shirts. But anyway, all right. So let's get to, before we get into Holty, let's explain what's going on. So Bicey went outback. So he's as far outback as you can go. He's gone to an event that has been described as schoolies for the grey nomads in Birdsville. And Birdsville's, you go as far out back as civilization is and then go another 1,000 and you find Birdsville. And for those who don't know what schoolies is, or if not from Australia, schoolies is at the end of each the graduating class of each year 12, we call it, the final year of high school. They all get together and have a huge party and get pissed. And grey nomads are the old people driving caravans up and down. So Bicey's gone to what they've described as schoolie for grey nomads, possibly the most bogan event in Australia, which is they're in the middle of the outback listening to 80s bands and getting drunk with no showers. So that's where Bicey is.
Well, he just won the Nutbush City Limits dance contest up there with the highest number of participants. That was a world record, I think they got. So maybe he might come on the show with his T-shirt, Holty, with a Tina Turner look-alike.
Something to be proud of.
Indeed.
And then BP, obviously, there's a world of hurt going on for BP at the moment. And he just said he can't come on the show and try and banter and be funny. So we're... obviously the X2 thing, we'll leave that alone for the moment because I actually don't know anything. I've purposely stayed away and let BP have some peace. So he's just he's madly trying to work his way through that one. So that's the scenario, late minute, and then of course Fritz and Holty, we are on for a great show. So Holty, mate, you're an Essex boy, aren't you? You race under a US flag, but you're an Essex boy.
I am. Yep. Been out here for 25 years now, though, on the West Coast. But yep, still home is probably still Southend-on-Sea, Essex. Yeah, or just down the road.
America?
Say that again.
Do they accept you in America as an American?
I don't think they have. No. I think I'm actually probably homeless these days. No one accepts me anymore, if they ever did.
Those who don't know, are there any common traits of people from Essex, or recognised traits?
Well, they're probably the classiest people from the UK, aren't they?
You knew what I was going for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they have a soccer team?
So there's a couple, but I'm a West Ham supporter, which is kind of on the fringes of Essex and London.
No, all right, we'll let you get away with that.
Yeah.
All right. First off, Holty, let's just get your sailing journey from the start. What was your initiation into sailing, mate?
So I was sailing before I was walking. I think my parents had a 26-foot yacht before I was born, and I knew nothing about life other than every weekend from May to October, the bags were packed and we went out on the boat for the weekend, and so that was how it all started.
That's cool.
And somewhere along the line, Dad had built a mirror dinghy. And when I was old enough to be trusted with the keys to that, I which was probably 7 or 8 years old, I was messing around in the creek in a mirror dinghy.
I love it.
So that's where it all started. Yeah,
very traditional.
Swallows and Amazon style.
I reckon there'd be a lot of 5A sailors that wish you stayed in the mirror too.
When
would you first start being competitive, like start racing? It sounds like you just mucked around in lakes and rivers.
Yeah, the earliest memories I have of racing have been, we raced the family cruising boat.
Yeah.
And there was a sort of a series of 4 or 5 races every summer that we would religiously do, and Dad was very keen to compete in, and complained about the handicap because it was all Portsmouth handicap racing. But we did it, and I can just remember at the start being a small kid, the noise of winches spinning and the boat manoeuvring before the start being a terrifying experience. And
wow.
And then once all that was over and done with, then I could sort of start getting involved a bit. But really, I was just sitting on the side of the boat doing as I was told.
Yeah. I was going to say, Holty, you and I have got almost identical upbringing. I was 10 days old, thrown on the boat from 10 days old. And then Dad built a Miracle, which is a bigger mirror.
Yeah.
And that was the first boat I went crewing on. And then our first boat over a race where I was steering was a mirror. And then the 5.0 was, obviously, I remember as a kid, I was sailing. Dad was in the trailer sailer with Mum, and my brother and I were sailing in a dinghy behind along in a lake, and a boat went over the top of us when I was a little fella. I could have probably been 14 or something. I can't remember, 13. And this boat went past us. And at the end of the day, I went up to Dad and I said, "What was that?" And he said, "That's the 505. And I said, "You know what? One day I'm going to sail one of those." I was blown away. I remember my first 505 interaction like that. Did you have anything like that, or did?
Quite scarily similar. Yeah, I was probably 10 or 11, and I used to hang out at the sailing club, waiting for somebody to need a crew. Right. If I didn't have anybody to sail with, and there was a 505, a really old one. It was 1,000 number series, something like that. And the guy who owned it was a guy called Trevor Earl, and I would always wait and hope that his crew didn't turn up so I could go and sail it with him. But his crew always turned up, so I never got to sail it with him. But yeah.
You had a better upbringing than me. We were lifesaving, and my old man got drunk at the pub and came home with a heron. And because he was German, he goes, "You guys will be sailing." So after that, we started sailing. That was
Is that right?
Yep.
He's never asked your origin story, mate. That's a good one. Drunken dad, off you go.
Yeah.
What a pathway. All right. Well, so for Holty, with that, what did you sail from there? Like, what was your...
Yeah, a bunch of messing around in different boats and dinghies, but the sort of the sort of switch from messing around in boats in the creek to going racing was another friend that I sailed with at the local club. He had a bit of a troubled upbringing and turned it good, and as a sort of a well done from his dad at his O levels at the time in the UK, his dad was going to buy him a 420, and fortunately his next door neighbour was Keith Mustoe, and there was a conversation between Simon, my friend's dad, and Keith Mustoe about getting him a boat. And at the time, Simon, at 17 years old, was probably pushing 200 pounds. He was a big kid. And Keith said, he's way too big for a 420. And so he said, well, what shall I get him? He said, well, the only boat that will suit him at his size is a 505.
There you go.
So, yeah, so there I was at 15 or 16, and my mate's just got a 50, and he needs a crew. So I weighed next to nothing, but I was on the wire and he was driving. So
wow.
we had to change clubs to one with a bit more water to sail it at, and we were too young to drive. We'd get driven everywhere we were going sailing, and the first nationals I did was at Weymouth, and I was 16 years old. I weighed next to nothing, and it blew every day.
Wow.
If there's one event I would choose to go back to do again, it would be that one, mainly so I could get a top 100 result rather than the result I got.
So is that how you got that psyche into your head about you've got to have like 6'7", 110 kilo crews all the time?
Well, one extreme to the other, right? We would come off, we did that event, and it literally blew 25 knots every day, and we'd come off the start line, and these huge rolling waves coming in up the channel, and I just watched all these boats disappear off the horizon, not understanding why Simon couldn't make the boat go any faster than he was.
Right.
I've got a bit of a clue about that now.
Yeah. So that was 1985, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Long
time ago.
Long time ago. And so obviously didn't make the top 100 in your first nationals in the 50, which is obviously your first competitive class. 7 short years later, mate, you're national champion.
Yeah, we sort of messed around with him driving for a couple of years, and he went away on holiday and left me the boat. And I got another friend to sail it with me, who was a bit bigger than I was, and we did a local race against 15 or so 50s and came second. And so he came back from his holiday and said, well, I suppose you better steer then. So we swapped around.
Yeah.
And that was my steering started. Yeah, so that would have been 87,
right.
And went to the nationals that year up at a place called Prestwick in Scotland, and there was 90 boats, and I don't know, we finished respectably. We had a few results at or around the top 10, and the next year we didn't do quite as well, and the following year, 89, the Worlds were in the UK, and we sort of felt we being held back by our boat, because that's always our excuse, right?
Of course.
It's never us, it's the boat.
Right.
So we got one of those strange Australian Kerwood boats.
Ooh.
Instead of the Parker we had, and it transformed us from being middle of the fleet to the front of the fleet in one purchase.
Wow, interesting.
So,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
And never really looked back.
19, 20?
Yeah, I was being 20 then. Yeah.
Interesting. I just want to clarify for a lot of people. We're not going to just be 50s, because you didn't just do 50s. You've got 49ers, you've got Melders, you've got mums and Transpacks and all sorts of stuff in your history. But 50 is clearly your passion. I think you're international class president with Mike Quirk sharing that role. What's the attraction with the 505? Don't know any better?
Think there are a lot of reasons, aren't there? I enjoy saying first, any sailing, I don't care. I'll go and sit on the side of any boat. I just like being on the water.
Nice.
But I think I don't have the time to, and I'm way too old now to do anything Olympic or anything along those lines. And the 5.0 kind of has that balance of always fun racing, whether it's 5 knots or 30 knots. It's international, so we get to travel around the world and race against a bunch of good people. And the people who race are guys like yourselves, always in it for the fun and to have a good time and race hard and then have a good time in the bar afterwards. So I think it just, for me, it has more of the best parts of sailing than almost any other boat I've ever sailed.
Yeah, I think it's got the all-round everything. It's not the best boat, it's not the worst boat, but it's just got everything for you. You're racing against really good people. Everyone helps you. The international fleet, the real international fleet, as in practically every country in the world's got it, makes a massive difference. And even just going to Garda doing those regattas, it's just a great class to be involved with.
Yeah. So it's always fun. And when it's windy, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, if you've got 710 crews, it is.
Are you saying I was too small, Fritz? Is that where you're going?
No, I just don't think we were good enough. We just didn't know enough.
Yeah.
I mean, really, on this same sort of subject, though, is until I saw your educational videos, Holty, I really didn't know how to set a 5.0 up. And you just simplified it so much. I wish Jordan and I had that info when we sailed. I mean, we were still competitive, but nothing compared to what watching your video made for us.
I think I was lucky enough to win, as you said, Jordan, a UK Nationals with a 100-boat fleet when I was 24, which I think at the time and maybe still was the youngest anybody had ever done that.
Yeah.
I look back on that and I had no clue what I was doing then. Absolutely no idea. I didn't really know where to put anything. We just had sailed more then and we were young and stupid.
Yeah.
But, as you get older, I think you need to use more of what you've learned and less of your athletic prowess. And so, I think passing on what you learn is a really key part of it.
There's nothing truer than the fact that time in the boat, especially in dinghies, is critical to getting you to the front of a fleet. So that's just the truth of it. And if you look at all the top sailors in the world, they've all spent they just love sailing. And they're on the boats all the time. And I think that is the one thing. So with the sort of whole process of the class, the coming into the 505s. Did you your first win in 92, did you think that you were a natural, or do you think it's sort of hard work that got you there?
I think we all have to win. I think you have to think you're good, right? Otherwise you wouldn't.
That's right.
But I also know that it's understanding what makes you win, right? And it's removing the flaws, getting rid of the things that stop you winning. So I think we did great in the early years, and then life gets in the way. I had kids and got married. No, I got married and had kids, just in case anybody's checking the chronology there. Then we you have to take work a bit seriously. So sailing took a back seat for a few years, and then when we came back, I was living in Santa Cruz, and it's always windy in Santa Cruz, and as Fritz points out, my crews tend to be on the bigger side. Yeah. And so we were pretty dominant when it was breezy, and we would get quite frustrated at going to events and doing well. I think Jordan, when we met, was Adelaide, in the first 3 or 4 races we were winning, and then the wind went off and we had a shocking end to the regatta. Yeah. And I had a few people, including the winners of that event, Jan Saugman and another guy, Ian Mitchell, come up to me at different times and said, "Holty, can't understand how you can be so good when it's windy and so shit the rest of the time." And we sort of took that on board and decided to not work on what we were good at, but work at what we were bad at.
Yeah. Okay.
Having that conversation with you, because we had the same issue. Like in Adelaide, we were a dog in light air. It's just, we were sailing out of home club. It helped a hell of a lot. It's a class that really carries weight well, which is, it's still surprising to me how well you can go in light air. But you said you went away and worked on just in that light air. Then you went, was it Santa Cruz? Where was the one that was really light regatta and you won?
Annapolis.
Annapolis, yeah. So it's a testament to doing the hard work.
Yeah, it is, and I think that's when you race against somebody a lot, you see where they put the time in and what works, and it's the same on every boat and every type of sailing, isn't it?
Mm. Mm. Right. So within that, obviously the big thing is the win. So for you, you won in 2014 your first Worlds with Rob. You've done most of your sailing with Carl Smith, and so you end up winning your first Worlds with Rob Rifle. How did Carl take that?
Well, I think it would have been a lot tougher if we never went and won a Worlds together. So,
yeah, absolutely.
It really was, and I think if you ask Rob or Carl, that we're all sort of part of the same team and put in the same effort and share the responsibility between us. This year, I'm sailing with Rob because Carl couldn't put the same level of effort in. He's got a busy work schedule at the moment and a young family. So I think.
How did you pick your crews?
Sorry, Fritz?
How did you pick your crews? Just standing next to them at the bar, and pick one that's 3 feet taller, or?
So Carl was a bit of a funny one, really. I was sailing with another guy, and Carl was sailing with another guy, and Carl was actually sailing with for those who don't know, Carl was a Navy SEAL, and he was sailing with another Navy SEAL, a guy called Ryan Cox. And Ryan was, and still is to this day, a very flaky individual. And the guy I was sailing with was being flaky. And so we kept ending up without another person to sail with. So we just, a couple of events, Carl and I started sailing together. And it kind of stuck. We enjoyed sailing together. And that was really how Carl and I started sailing together. And he wasn't quite as big when we were first sailing, because he'd just come out of the military at that point and was a little bit leaner and slimmer.
Yeah, we call Carl the world's least fit Navy SEAL is sort of the nickname he's always had. So I'll just clarify. So 2015 you win the Worlds with Carl Smith. 2017 you win the Worlds with Carl Smith. So Rob is now with you this year. You've been untouchable this year so far. When we were sailing against each other, what we used to do, Fritz, we'd have a couple of mainsails or a couple of jibs, and we'd decide which one for the day, right? We always had this theory that maybe you just unrolled one of your crews, just depending on what the conditions were.
Yeah, I think Rob's a little bit smaller than Carl, but not by a lot.
No. So the real important one, go on, Fritz.
No. The real important one. I was reading notes. Oh,
that's cool. The real important one. Around that time, there's a boat came into your possession. Now, I don't know if you still, 9072 is your sail number. Around that time, you had that boat. Is that boat a special boat, or would you just happily sail any of them?
So we have 3 boats at the moment. We have 9072, which is a European boat, which has done all of the World Championships since 2013, 2014, something like that, 13. And we've got a boat on the East Coast that we race when I'm out, because Carl lives in Annapolis, and we have a boat on the West Coast that we race out here. So we're in a very fortunate position to have 3 boats, and we've done well in all 3. And before 9072, we had 9002, which we had good luck with too. But 9072 definitely has some magic, I think.
Are they all the same builder?
So they're all built by Ovington. The one on the West Coast is an Ovington, and the rest are Ovington Rondars. For those that don't know, there was a hull shape change along the way, but Yeah.
You
So
find any difference with them?
say that again.
You find any difference with them?
Not really. No. I think if you do, it's mostly in the head. I think we had different fours in them for a while, and we've standardised those a bit. So I think that was a bit different at first, but yeah. But 9072 has been a crazily successful boat. I can't think of any 50 that's won anything close to the number of events it's won. So we've won all the worlds in that boat. I think it's come second 4 times. Yeah, it's a pretty scary track record.
It's quite impressive, Fritz, when you listen to this. You know, we obviously made a mistake, mate. We had one boat, you know, one mast, one set of sails, and Holty's pulling out different crews, different boats. You know, I think to get to the top is pretty impressive. You know, like the involvement and effort you have to put in to succeed in the top dinghy class.
Well, speaking from both sides, as in having only a boat in Australia and then sailing with Snowdy, and we had a boat here and overseas, it makes a massive difference that you can get into your own boat that's set up your own way and go out sailing. I mean, pretty well in Australia, I'd say, I can't really speak now since COVID, but I'd say there'd be 10 Australians that have got boats overseas.
It's
Otherwise, right now it's unaffordable to get there if you've got to try and get there with a container.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it definitely seems like a sort of a crazy financial proposition, but it actually saves us a ton of money because we're not shipping boats around. We can turn up, do more sailing. We don't have to lose a boat for a summer while it's in transit. So, yeah, it's a huge advantage.
Well, let's just put it, you know, for all the listeners out there that, you know, need to convince their wife that they need to, or the wives that need to convince their husband, or whichever way it's working. It's an obvious financial gain because by having 2 boats, because as you say, you don't have that dead time and those costs, and because every time you sell your boat, you get the same money back or more. Eh?
they own half the boat too.
Yeah, of course, that's right. But yeah, so you know, rather than it's better, it's smarter to have more than one boat. Is obviously financially as well as from a sailing perspective is what I was getting at.
It's like bikes; you can't have too many, right?
That's right.
Actually, on that note, Holty, I know you're right into your fitness, so you do a lot of bike riding and all that. How much does that sort of help you in a any class?
I think it helps a huge amount. Yeah, I do a ton of mountain biking, some road biking, running. But yeah, I think the mountain biking or biking in general just makes your legs so much stronger that you can hike without any impact. So yeah, I remember when I was first sailing getting tired from hiking, and that never happens now.
Right.
And I'm significantly older now than I was then.
Yeah, yeah. So
Go back and sail at laser then.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
So it hasn't worked for me because I've been electric scootering around a bit, and you know, really hasn't improved my hiking fitness at all. So I'll just have to check on that.
Turn the battery down a bit.
So obviously early on in the class, there's been a big debate over the years is you know, how you become better, and the sharing of information thing is, which is what you've done. You've gone out, Fritz has referred to it, you know, there's all these online stuff, and by sharing information, you've become better. So one of the examples of that we talked about in the past was what you call, guys, I think you call it Team Tuesday or something like that. And, you know, the strength of the Americans, you know, like on the West Coast where you sail, there's some fairly phenomenal sailors have come out of that region, and they were all members of Team Tuesday. Is that right? Is that the best one?
Yeah, I think Team Tuesday was Howie and Mike Martin's original sort of start point back in the late 90s, that they got going and led to them winning the World Championships back in '99, and we've all, you know, benefited from the evolution of that. And yeah, they still go out Tuesday nights down in LA. We do the same up here in San Francisco. And then whenever we get together, we'll do a day or two of training before a regatta. and then we'll debrief even during a fairly serious regatta like the North Americans. We'll all sit down and share the information afterwards, because I think you're only as good as you're being pushed. If you're not being pushed, you're not getting better. So I think the level we have on the West Coast, as you say, is amazing. We've got some absolutely amazing sailors, and at the last World Championships all the way back in Rio in 19, we were 4 of the top 5 at the Worlds, and the full podium. So yeah, it's a huge advantage to our sailing when we travel.
Yeah, I think people just got to get over the me, myself, and I sort of attitude, and unless you're, like you said, unless you're being pushed, you're not sailing the best of your ability, because whatever it is, someone will come up later on that you're racing against that will have done this sort of stuff and be better. So, but most of the time when you go to club racing even, and then you go to nationals, all those club boats finish in the same sort of area.
That's it.
It might be 20 to 30, might be 10 to 20. The good ones that train together are 1 to 10.
Yeah, we had an event in Santa Cruz 2 weeks ago where we had 12 boats, but it was probably the toughest racing we do this year.
It's
and World Cup for your own club.
Yeah.
Well, and to emphasise that, so I guess for the listener out there, I know we're being very 505 centric, but that's because we're all mates from the 505. So, but the point of this is that if you do want to succeed, you got to share information, and the more information you share and the more open you are within your training group, the more chance you've got of succeeding. Because in the end, when you get to a world championship, if you don't share information, you're racing the 100 boats. But if you do share information and you guys are at the top of the tree, then you're still racing only those people you train with, because you're the ones, as you just showed in Frio Holty, 4 of the top 5 boats were from your training group. And you go back through the 5A history, there was the Lake Macquarie days and the Kerwood days, they had the same thing. It's consistent. You see it regularly.
Yeah, I think that the Lake Macquarie one is a direct comparison. I remember talking to Neil Long after the 92 Worlds. He'd finished 4th, and he said to me afterwards, he said, I haven't won a club race all year.
I love that.
That's not true.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even club-wise. I mean, going back to that educational video that you did, I mean, in most classes, you can ring someone up from overseas and they'll tell you most people will tell you everything you need to know, and you can find out, or even go on, say, Sailing Anarchy, or, when Jordan and I were looking for what sort of sail should we use, we just went on Sailing Anarchy, and we had you and a whole heap of other people come back with what they thought was better, and then you can make, smarter decisions.
Yeah. Well, let's specific this on the 5.0s now, like with you and Quirky running the show, you've become much more, the 5.0 class, it's quite a technical boat. The 5.0 class is really, if you can sail a 5.0, you can step on any boat because you understand how every single system works. And on the class website now, there's a whole educational thing, which is where I think Fritz is referring to some of those videos that have come up. So the 5.0 class is actually trying to be like a library, I guess, in many ways now.
Yeah, I think that the last few years has been quite tough to do anything on an international stage without the travel and what have you. So, there's been a bit more focus on providing some background and some information, and it's not designed just to be about 505s. I think it's a resource for people who go sailing to understand how things work and to work on that, because, as you say, there's a string for everything in a 5.0, and there are in other boats too. But if you can take that knowledge, it translates pretty well into anything. And if people get psyched to go 5.0 sailing because of that, then so much the better.
I think it's sort of every class that you sail, you gain a little bit of knowledge. You're just thinking outside the square. I mean, we went sailing one day, even with sailmakers, right? One sailmaker was used to a planing boat, uphill, and the other one was used to more a ballast-driven boat. And we were sailing along, and the sailmaker I was using was setting the boat up, that we're planing the whole time. And then the other sailmaker, and we were getting dorked by this other boat. And the other sailmaker said, look, just move your outer in, a little bit. So I move it in like at 25 mil. He goes, no, let him move it in. So I moved it in like 3 inches. We went from being a dog to all of a sudden you remember that day, Jordan?
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah.
It was only someone thinking outside the square of that class.
Yep.
And because one was so skip orientated compared to the other one, it gives you different views about everything.
Yeah, it's
You're
interesting.
open.
It's interesting. That's from my perspective. This is where I think the critical part of the class, not the class of sailing, is that you never master it. You're always searching for perfection, but you never get mastery of it, and that's where the challenge of sailing lies, and where a lot of the enjoyment comes from at racing at a top level is that total dedication to trying to find those differences and those gains, and it's rewarding hard work basically.
It does, yeah. Sailing is all about the effort you put in.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we should try and sort of say is that when you look at a 5.0, right? Let's keep this focused in on 5.0s for a little bit. When you look at a 5.0, as you said, Holty, there's a lot of strings. There's a string for everything on a 5.0. When you're sailing fast, right, one of the great joys of being a crew like myself is that I've got to sail with a lot of sort of very, very good skippers. I've been carted around the course, and the way they respond to things, because the skipper is doing the gear changing on a 5.0, is different. What are your go-to gear changes on a boat? Like, do you have just one or two, or when you're racing, or?
Yeah, I try to keep it quite simple because ultimately I'm a pretty simple person, and I think the crew is really giving me the feedback on how we're doing as well as what I'm seeing, and really you're either higher or lower, faster or slower, and I kind of divide my sailing up into those 4 quadrants. And obviously, if you're lower and slower, you're really in a bad place, and if you're higher and faster, you're in a really good place. And really, it's all about changing around those quadrants. So, are we higher but slower? Okay, so we can give up a bit of height for a bit more speed, and making the trade-offs. And it's really what the changes are that will move me from one of those quadrants to the other. So, maybe, for instance, to go a bit faster, I just ease a bit of vang, or pull up a bit of board, or give a bit more rake. So it's really just changing from one quadrant to the other if that's what we need to do.
Looking at you, Sal, though, you seem to be a bit more lower and faster, and it looks like you're actually going higher than you actually are. It's only because you're moving forward, if you know what I mean. And the foils are working a bit better, and it seems to be a better mode for a 5.0.
Yeah, I think it works in a lot of boats. When you watch people sail these days, it's make the foils work for you, especially as foils progress, they become more and more difficult to keep a good attached flow, and you have to have speeds to make the foils work. And I think 5.0s have always been that way. If you just sort of shoot the main in and point the bow up, it's not going to go. You've got to unleash the potential.
If you look at, say, your results, if you've had one nemesis, it's obviously Mike Martin, and he obviously looks like he's going that lower, faster mode than you even. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I think, and this goes back to Jordan Singh on training. We go out and we beat ourselves against the San Francisco Breeze or Santa Cruz Breeze on a regular basis, and there's nothing worse than watching a boat run away from you. So you do everything you can to not let that happen. And I think that ends up with us sailing the boats as fast as we possibly can, and the rest of it works from that. That only works once you're into a planing mode. It doesn't really work if you've got less than 12 knots. But once the breeze is over 12 knots, yeah, that's how we roll.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just thinking, I was chuckling away to myself because Fritz is sort of talking about upwind, you seem to be sort of lower and faster. And the irony is downwind, you seem to be higher and faster. You do the whole apparent wind sailing. And I think you guys clued on to apparent wind sailing much earlier than the rest, because the 5.0 is a symmetrical kite, but it sailed like an asymmetric as soon as you start planing, or as soon as you got the crew on the wire. So that whole sort of apparent wind element, you guys were onto it way earlier than the rest of us, I think. I think Chris Nicholson was onto it first, though.
Yeah, definitely. He gets the credit, or Darren, because obviously crews are smarter than helm, so we'll give it to Darren.
Well, the kites made a difference when they came in, when they changed to the big ones.
Yeah, that was the final game changer. But for me, it goes back to my dad used to tell me when I was a kid racing the boat, the family cruising boat, that the boat that sails the shortest distance wins the race.
Yep.
So I've just been on a mission to prove him wrong ever since.
Yep. I love it.
A race in our nationals when you came down here in 2019, Holty, was blowing about 8 knots, and majority of us took off on downwind, with 2 in the boat. You took off on this massive reach, 1 kilometre each way, and you came back and you gained like 100 metres. And that opened my eyes a lot, even in the lighter stuff, to doing that thing, just higher and faster. But once you make that decision, you have to stick with it, don't you?
Yeah, I think this is another sailing rule that I have, is that if you have a plan, you got to stick it out until you know it's definitely not working. I think a mistake I used to make was to just keep changing modes. No matter what boat I was sailing, I would try something and not stick it out for long enough to know if it was working or not. And I think you have to commit to a plan and make sure you got some real evidence. And I think I'm lucky enough to put enough time in sailing now that I can detect quickly whether something's working or not, and keep rolling with it. I think the other thing about sailing is it's a leverage game, and doing something like that gives you big leverage on the rest of the fleet.
We've done that just on a tactical side. Would you have done that if you were in front of that race?
Yes, because everybody would follow.
Hopefully,
yeah.
I love the confidence. That's one of the tricks of being a good sailor as well, is that unshakable confidence. Do you want an answer to that, or you just?
Oh no, he answered smiling.
Yeah. Well, I think sailing is a funny thing. It is. We all. The biggest learning experience I got was copying, right? And I think the fastest way to get fast is to copy the people who beat you. And now it's quite unnerving when I'm going one way up a beat and everybody else is going the other way up a beat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what do they know that I don't know?
Yeah.
Haven't they? Don't they know they're supposed to follow? It's very confusing.
I just got this one story that sort of comes in perfectly. It's Quirky told me this, and you guys have probably heard it. His first ever, he just finished this book on Paul Elstrom, right? And reading this article about identifying a persistent shift. And he went out in this one of the last races that Paul Elstrom ever sailed, and Quirky's first world title. And he went out and he got a great start down near the pin end, and all the boats down there were just getting lifted and lifted and lifted. And he goes, no, it's not. I don't see it as I don't see it as a persistent shift that's going to oscillate back. So they keep going, and these other boats behind them were peeling off, going out to the right. In the end, there were 2 boats left out there. Quirky gets around the weather mark second last. Guess who the last boat was? Paul Elstrom. So it's not an applied science, sailing. So I just really love that story.
Yeah.
That, Paul Elstrom doesn't know when to a persistent shift, but identifying how you should sit with the fleet is probably the critical point there.
Yes. Well done, Fritz. That's right.
Well, there we go.
Well, I don't sail as much these days. I spend more time on a coach boat, and that conversation about picking the wind right is everyone talks about that. And I say, well, the fleet makes that. You've got to. It's mathematics. Sailing is mathematics. You've got to look at the risks that you're taking, and the fleet. You've got to take the fleet into the consideration because, we used to discuss this all the time. I think, Fritz, when we were racing upwind, and you'd say, is it going to be a persistent shift or is it going to be an oscillating shift, right? And you used to say, mate, how many times is it like a persistent shift where it's when 1 in 100? So let's stick to the 99, shall we? And that was
everything is a persistent shift, really, unless I look at the weather map and depending on where the high is. If it's on the start of the high, I'll end up protecting the right a bit. If it's on the back of the high, I'll protect the left a bit. But other than that, everything's a persistent shift in my eyes. How do you go with that, Holty?
Yeah, I think before you go sailing, and we've done this with you guys. I remember at Hamo every day we would sit down and do our pre-brief and try and work out what's going on. And I think you get out on the racetrack. And you have before the start, you've got to have a plan for how you're going to go up the first beat, and how you see it, and what's the tide doing, what's the wind doing, and the times when it goes wrong are pretty much the times when you haven't followed your plan. I think 90% of the time your plan would have worked if you'd been able to execute it, and we'll be going down the run after a beat, going, well, that didn't go well. And well, you said you were going to go left. Why did we go right? It's like, well, yeah, circumstance. So I think sailing is definitely, reading what you've got in front of you and working out a plan and having the confidence to stick to it, or being able to, get on the right side of it as quickly as you can. I think we probably all see the same thing when you're a third of the way up the beat. If something isn't making sense, like you thought going left was good and the right's looking better. Is there a reason, or is it just the right's better? In which case, make your way to the right and see what's working over there. So I think saying is having a plan, but also being able to deviate from that when you're seeing the circumstances change. And I think the people who adapt to that the quickest are the ones that win. The number of times I come off the start line and watch boats sitting in our bad air and not tacking, I think, well, you're just bleeding distance. Yeah. What are you doing there?
What are you doing there? Yeah. Don't bring up Hamo, Fritz, because that was painful, that regatta for us. I think that Worlds we finished in the teens, but I think our speed was right at the front of the fleet, except we had. This is another lesson. We had technical failure, like after technical failure on that bloody regatta, like losing a rudder, the pole launcher the pole not staying up, cleats letting go. It was just, you've got to have the speed, but then you've also got to have the boat that's working and sorted. And that was a painful regatta for us, Fritz, I think, wasn't
it? It was. Anyway, this is
if it's any consolation, it was painful for me too.
Well, you got fourth, I think, didn't you?
Second.
That's right.
Yeah.
Second, that's right.
One that got away.
No, it's going back to training a little bit. How do you see the coach in this? A coach?
Well, I think I always, at a big event, I enjoy having a coach around. For a multitude of reasons, coaches see things that you don't see when you got your head down racing. I think they also a good coach helps you start thinking before you start racing. And I think we spend a lot of time going sailing without actually trying to work out what's working and what isn't before a start of a race. So when you got a coach out there, they really focus you on the important things that are going to matter, what the wind's doing, as you're saying, what the shifts are doing. And they also help in the reliance on equipment failures or spare parts or water for a long day out there, and then just helping you get back if you've had a bad race, just to shake it off and move on. So we've been lucky enough to have coaches at most of the Worlds over the last 10 years, and it's made a big difference to our overall ability to compete.
Yeah, even at sort of club, state, national level, I think it's really important, even training. I mean, we could go out sailing every club race for the whole year and not learn what we learn in one day, have with a coach.
Yep.
There you go.
I think everyone in sailing knows what to do most of the time. It's just being able to do it consistently all the time. The good guys just do it more often than you.
Yeah, self-coaching only goes so far. And sailing is definitely a sport that certainly our generation doesn't take coaching particularly seriously. If you were to play tennis or swim or any other sport, you would have somebody helping you on your technique and what you're doing. Golf, or so many sports where there'll be a coach there.
Yeah, I thought I was doing a bit of coaching. We did a match racing series in France one time, and we had this Asian guy sailing with us, this French guy sailing with us, but he was his Asian descent. And it was sort of funny with him speaking English with a French accent looking Asian. And he said to me at the end of the regatta, he goes, "Deussen, I learned 3 things from you." His name was Francois Lee. I said, "What's that, Francois?" He goes, "Fuck, fucking, and fuck off." Oh, God, I love that guy. I just thought I'd put that in.
Yeah.
Top tips.
I do think that is
how to do that.
Hey, actually, while we're talking about things like coaching, which is good, what about inspirations, Holty? Is there any sailors that inspire you or had inspired you at a younger age?
Yeah, I mean, a load. I think as a 5.0 sailor, Peter Colclough.
Oh, yep.
And just an amazing sailor who had an ability to get a boat around the course like nobody else. I was lucky enough, talking about coaches, to sail with a guy called Colin Merritt. And that was probably the guy that really transformed my sailing. He crewed for me for a couple of years, but he was also a big coach. He coached us as well at Weymouth in 16, and just an amazing person to sail with, in terms of, he was driving the boat from the wire, I was just steering, and he'd be like, "Okay, bit more vang, drop the forestay off a bit, do this, do that, board there." And learnt so much from sailing with him. He was incredible. And also just, I'd come out of attack and the boat was heeling too much, and he would "I'm not a gazelle," yeah, as he was waiting for me to get the boat flat so he could get out on the wire. And then, I think I was very lucky growing up in the 80s and into the 90s. There were so many great UK sailors that I was lucky enough to race against and compete against, that was just amazing times. So people like Bill Masterman, who anybody who's done any sailing in the UK will know. So a lot of people.
Bill Masterman. The 5.0, it just bounces as soon as you do get it flat. What you think's flat's not really flat most of the time. I mean, we put an inclinometer on our boat, and that made a big difference. Just for us to know exactly what flat was.
Got to be flat. I think if you think the boat's heeling to windward, it's probably flat.
Yeah.
Yeah. The crew's joy, trying to get a boat dead flat and then just getting bounced and teabagged all the way along. It's all these skippers. Get it flat. Well, stop putting me in the water, you mongrel.
With your arms over your head.
All right, well, we're going to talk about one thing. So with this whole discussion, we're trying to talk about we're talking about the 5.0, we're talking about Holty, but, trying to transpose it out to other class so you can take it to your boat. There is one unique thing about the 505 class that it's perfect to have you and Fritz here to talk about. It's gate starts. People don't understand gate starts like a 5.0 sailor understands a gate start. And the one thing about a gate start is that if you're fast or you're slow. It's just, let's talk about gate starts, what our view is on gate starts. With Holty first.
My view is coming back from a never done one before. I'm sort of guessing most people would have thought, like I would, that it's going to be easy. Everyone gets an easy start. We just take off on starboard behind the motorboat. Oh, for God's sake! There's so many more things involved. Holty, I'll let you go on from here.
Yeah, I mean, it's in my head, a gate start's like a line start, only it's moving.
Yep.
So all the skills are very similar. You need to make a hole to leeward. You need to be overly personal to the boat to windward of you to give yourself a lane to get away from the start. I think probably the biggest difference is because everybody starts more evenly on a gate start, you don't have options quickly off the start. You can't tack until there's a lane, or you've got to work really hard to make an opportunity to tack. So I think you come off a start and you have to work so much harder off of a gate start to give yourself options. So all the same rules apply as a line start. It's just moving, and you got to work a damn sight harder for the first 400 yards to give yourself opportunities.
But it's sort of magnified. I mean, you can have a 4, 5, 6 minute gate and 100-odd boat fleet, right? You can sail a long way, the boat on port tack, a long way in those 6 minutes. So if you get the wrong end, game over. I mean, in Poland, we 130 boats. I decided we'd start reasonably late. Well, Jesus, was that the wrong call? Because we ended up having a tack underneath the gate boat going out on port tack, and then really got distressed about it, I suppose. And then we ended up having to, because the gate finished, end up having to sort of reach back to the line to sail off. And then there's 120 boats in front of you. Well, there's no wind back there at all. So the chances of getting back anywhere respectable that you're going to carry there's so much more involved than I think a line start. The timing off the gate launch, the being upwind. I sort of thought when I first got in, if we were going fast, that's a better option off the boat. Well, I sort of learned afterwards that you've got to be on the breeze, at that gate boat. So you get that height. You do, as you say, destroy the boat to weather and gain a little bit to leeward.
Yeah, it's all about building space, and J turns off the back of the rubber boat are not the way to go.
No.
One of the great things about a gate start is that it teaches you how to hold a lane. You've got to hold your lane, and so it's the ultimate session. So if you're going to turn up to an event and you can't hold a lane, haven't got that boat speed, well, you're going to find out about it. Then there become the tactics there where Fritz is just going on, do you get out early, do you get out late, And obviously you look at whether the gate's lifted or knocked, and then you also have that equation about how fast you are. And if you're fast, why not just get out there straight away? So Chris Nicholson was famous for that. You're kind of famous for that as well, Holty, getting out early.
I think that's a speed confidence thing, isn't it? If you think you're faster than the Pathfinder, get out and race. We have a pretty standard routine. I think it would be the same sort of thing you do for a line start. Do I want to be going out on starboard, or do I want to be going out on port once I've got going? What's the lifted tack? So we will go around the start mark with sort of somewhere around a minute to go and go, do we want to be the rabbit or do we want to be racing?
Yep.
And that's kind of our first big decision. And then I think after that, if we want to be racing, then we want to win the start to get out so that we can put our foot down and try and control the race.
Yep.
Unless you're the gate boat, and then that takes a lot of pressure off you. Then you got every excuse you want if it goes wrong.
And it's a 50-50 roll of the dice, isn't it? It can go wrong.
So let's for the race organisers out there listening in on this. One of the advantages of getting a gate away a race is that no recalls, very few recalls, but you get a whole huge fleet away. You don't have to split fleets. You just get everyone out on the course and you get racing underway. Ironically, there can be a recall in a gate start if there's something goes wrong with the rabbit, the pathfinder. One of which is often the crew can fall overboard. How often? Not that we ever had that instruction. If you get a massive knock as the gate boat, your trap wire slips or your crew falls off or something happens. It happens a lot in a gate.
It does happen. I think if you're in that position,
amazing
you want to sort of try and do everything you can to get that race thrown out. Persuade the race committee that this is an unfair race, whatever it takes. But sometimes if it's Fritz's persistent shift, you're okay going that way, aren't you?
Yeah, that's it.
That's right.
That's it.
I did say persistent shifts. I don't treat as isolating shifts. I treat as the ones all the time. Did I?
Yeah, that's it. You did. Except for that even that last 20 metres to the mark. Fritz is famous for doing that little extra tack right near the top mark. Like he won't hang on and just won't hit the ley lines to the last second. So, which is I agree with 100%.
Totally. Yeah, that's
other tacks into a mark.
Yeah, that's the biggest mistake you can make in big fleet racing.
Yep.
Getting on ley lines early.
It is unless you're match racing and then you take your opposition out to the ley line and you've got them locked in. So it is part of the fun discussion where people actually don't think about that sort of element. When you are coaching, you sort of got to talk about the minute you get to a ley line, all your options have gone. So and Fritz is famous for I always knew when we're racing upwind, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm going, we're about 30 metres from the top mark, I'm going, well, at least I know I've got 2 more tacks to come.
Not all the time. If you're in front, we didn't.
All right. So now, Holty, one of the great things about you, mate, is that you're always positive and happy. Like as you said, we were in a little training group when you did the Worlds at Hamo, and there's no ego with you, but like you're always you're just one of the blokes, which is great. And as part of that, you've given back now. With the work with running the class. You're working with another great friend of both Fritz and mine, and yours, obviously, in a young man by the name of Michael Quirk, who is also a great giver. Is it hard to do that sort of role? Do you find it hard, or?
I think, the last few years it's been very hard because we haven't been able to get together and do the things we sort of have planned to do. And you kind of lose a little bit of momentum and steam from that lack of getting around and actually seeing people. But yeah, I've had so much out of the sport of sailing and had so much enjoyment, and really it's defined my life. That I feel you doing this is the same sort of thing. Trying to encourage more people to sail and get more people out is a really key thing for us, and passing on the legacy of a great sport. It
is a great sport. All right, well, let's dial into something really critical. Obviously, the timing of this interview is a little bit biased by me. Obviously, I've got an agenda here. Any events coming up in the 505 world?
Yeah. We have the World Championship starting at the beginning of August, so 3 weeks out now.
Yep.
So, be off heading out that way to do that. Should be fun, and actually get to race against big fleets again. So looking forward to that.
Where are they happening?
They're Cork Island.
Cork in Ireland.
Yeah,
Can we
the
not
world's
see
oldest club?
can we not see the risks of getting a bunch of 505 sailors to Ireland, and after having not seen each other for a few years, can we not see the risks that we're taking on here?
I think there's there could be some good times to be had.
How many boats have they got nominated, Holty?
I think there's 80 entries so far.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. With the issue of travel and logistics and getting boats there, that's an amazing turnout. That's fantastic. Yeah,
it's a tough one with containers. It took a huge effort for the US teams to get containers sorted and shipped. Effort in terms of just getting hold of containers and then financially to get them there. So yeah, it's a huge undertaking at the moment. So that's really cool to see.
Yeah, that's really alienated Australia at this stage of getting in, anyone with a boat over there in a container.
Yeah.
Unless you've got a boat over there, forget it.
Yeah, it's a challenge for the whole sport for a while. Is getting moving boats around for big events.
Yeah, well, a classic case in point, Sandy and Marshy, two very talented Australian sailors. They're not going to be at the Worlds because, and I don't think Sandy and Marshy sail 5.0s anymore now. It's sort of knocked them out the last few years. It sort of has cleared out some of the fleet, Sandy's discovered cruising and off he's gone, and Fritz, now I think you've sold your European boat, so you're into the Etchels and you've just basically given up life. You've moved into the retirement home.
No, not quite. It wasn't my boat, and I don't disagree with them. At the time, Snowdy had a boat overseas, and we weren't able to use it, and so the option was to keep it there, and hopefully it would come back, or because we were booked in to do both the Worlds in Sweden and hopefully Bermuda. Was it Bermuda?
Yeah.
And we had to can both of them, and then so he sold the boat. So now we don't really know what will happen. All the Australian boats would have the same option. I don't know how many of them sold boats over there or whatever, but anyway, the World's coming back after 3 years, and with a result of 80 boats, it's been great for the class.
Yeah. Good for the class. Have you sailed out of Cork before, Holty?
No, I haven't. No, looking forward to it though.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's going to be like any Northern European venue. Could be anything. Most likely to be cold.
Most likely to be cold. I'm actually I'm worried about that because I live where I live in Australia, Sunshine Coast. It doesn't get cold, although tonight it has been cold. It just doesn't get cold, so we don't actually have any heating. And we don't have warm gear. So I'm quite interested as to what I should wear because I'm going to come over and talk 5.0s. I'm going to try and get people who are into it, into sailing, to sort of get to experience the race, try and get some coverage for the event and talk about what makes a 5.0 work. So I think that we could make this quite enjoyable for a lot of the listeners if they're interested.
That'd be great. Yeah, I think there'll be a good venue for that, and a lot to pass on there.
Yeah. So for this, as I said, this build up is pretty important, but we are going to try and do as much coverage as possible. I've got a few ideas in terms of how we're going to sort of communicate what's going on, but I think there'll be quite a few videos coming out, and obviously when my two idiot mates come back on deck, there'll be a Baccarati from the Worlds. So if you're not into 5.0s, I guarantee by the end of the month you will be.
Is there tracking Holty this time?
I'm not sure. Not sure.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Great they did.
Go on, Fritz. Sorry, bud.
I just said it'd be great if they had it.
Yeah.
The track sort of doesn't alienate anyone, and it's so good watching it.
It's an interesting thing because the 505 class partnered up with SAP very early on. In fact, we were the first class to partner up on the analytics. So Hasso's team were looking to build analytics, which then they used as a marketing form for their business analytics. And so the 5.0 class has been associated with them for quite a long time. And that, I remember I got asked to do the commentary at the Aarhus Worlds for World Sailing Games, and they said, could you do the analytics? Have you ever used the SAP analytics? So this is the 2018 World Sailing Games, and they said, have you used the analytics? And I said, I've only been using them since 2007. So I remember when Fritz was sailing. You were doing a regatta somewhere, Fritz, and I was going through the analytics every night, just looking at all the data that was coming off and trying to work out what was going on. And you could actually do a little bit of sort of coaching, about 15% of coaching from the analytics from the other side of the world.
Yeah, no, that was really good. Having other people analyse it for you too.
Yeah.
I just had a halo over my head with one of the lights, so I just got up to change it.
Oh, okay.
I'm still not looking. I was better looking with the halo. How do you minimise my picture?
It's good, Fritz. All right, so Holty, let's talk about some other boats. Let's go. What other boats do you like?
Oh man, I just like sitting on the side of any boat, and it doesn't matter whether it's the world's slowest boat or the world's fastest boat. I just enjoy getting out there. I just don't get asked enough. That's the problem. There's a plug there. If you need somebody to trim your headsail, I'm your man. But yeah, no, I just enjoy going sailing. Fast boats are my preference, but if it's tactical, we do a bunch of racing on a boat called a Moor 24 on the west coast, particularly in Santa Cruz, and I sail with a bunch of 5.0 sailors in that, and that's always good fun. And yeah, just I've over the years sailed pretty much everything. I think you said at the beginning. I enjoyed. I was sailing 49ers for a couple of years when they first came out, and that was both terrifying and fun. Sailed with I crewed in the 49er with a guy called Jim Maloney, who is a name that you may know but probably don't know, but you would know two of his kids, Andy and Alex, who've gone on to be moderately successful.
Yes, moderately.
Holty, what's the best and the worst boat you've ever sailed? I know you've probably got, but we won't include 5.0, all right?
The worst is very easy. I had when I was very young, we had a boat called a Puffin, I think it was, which had collapsible sides.
What?
That the idea was you could put it on top of the cabin on the boat.
It was obviously self-done.
It was about 8 foot long, collapsible sides, and my dad, some would say tight, some would say frugal, but he wasn't good at spending money on things. So he had a sail off of a boat that was significantly bigger and a mast from that he rigged on that. And so I'm sailing this 8 foot boat with a sail almost as big as a laser sail. And to actually try to make that boat go in anything was terrifying. But if you got the wrong side of the tide, if the tide turned and you were the wrong way and you had to beat back, you just couldn't. And many times I dragged it back along on the mud. So that was easily the worst boat I've ever sailed.
And the best
boat? The best boat. I think it was just the event and the time, but I did a Mum 36 Worlds in the UK out of the Hamble in '95, and it blew like stink every day. And that was just a blast. The boats were utterly terrifying in big breeze back then in '95. If you screwed up a jibe, the mast came down.
Wow.
But that was like,
as the best boat that you've ever sailed. That's surprising.
Yeah, Mum 36. That was just crazy racing in the mid '90s. Just very fun.
That's cool. What about, Fritz's question's a good one. Like, what about the modern stuff that you see around? Like, obviously, Sail GP is exciting, or the America's Cup boats, or the Moths. Like, what does any of that sort of stuff jump out at you?
Yeah, I'd love to have a ride on one of them. I saw you last at the Sail GP in San Francisco, and that was amazing to watch. I don't think anybody will ever invite me on one of their boats, but it was good to watch. I'd love to do some Moth or similar sort of sailing, but the West Coast is not a good place to do that. It's too windy, too wavy, and we've got too much weed and kelp in the water.
Right.
So it's just not really a foiling paradise.
Yeah.
So that's kind of limited that sort of sailing for us. And, I think with it being a windy part of the world that we live in, San Francisco Bay is sort of rules out a lot of boats from the get-go.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like San Francisco is quite a unique experience. Do you get cold?
Yes. Yeah.
Man, I couldn't wear my wetsuit enough in that place.
Yeah, no, it is it's waiting around in San Francisco is probably the worst place to wait around.
It is also the only place in the world where I've actually done a full forward 360 flip in a 5.0, launched off a wave completely. We got it far enough over that it actually went right over the mast and back around again and hit me on the back of the head. So it gets windy there. It is quite an amazing location.
It is a fantastic place to race. Yeah, just you're only going to get one condition though. It isn't for those that like a variety. No,
that's right. It's all about boat speed. You got to hit a side, and it gets super windy, and it's so cold. I learned a quote there, and I wear it out constantly. The coldest winter I ever spent was summer in San Francisco. It's a different world, mate. Different world. You guys are crazy. That's all I'll say. But I guess it's the water temperature off the West Coast there.
Yeah, and that's what makes it windy. So the ocean is cold. It's 55 degrees, so 12 or 13 C. And inland it's 100 degrees or 40 degrees, depending on the scale you're using, and that just sucks in the breeze and makes it windy. And some iconic views.
What do you think of One Design compared to IRC racing? Because there'll be a lot of people listening now that'll be sailing obviously both boats, and you've obviously sailed both. What's your opinion on?
I like to know where I stand on the racetrack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that makes you a better sailor, sailing One Design?
I think the One Design stuff is it's an immediate learning experience, right? Whereas if it's worked out later on a spreadsheet, it's a bit of a different game. But I think you're still pushing yourself in the boat as hard as you can, aren't you?
Yeah, yep. Being able to look into a mirror straight away can give you everything you ever want to know in a One Design race.
Yeah, going back to my quadrant, higher, faster, lower, slower, it isn't so relevant in different boats.
Yeah, but I mean, there's obviously place for IRC, and it makes it really difficult with different weather, different conditions, different boats. I think they're doing the best they can with what they've got to make up a rule for it. But
yeah.
Struggle with it.
Yeah, and I think part of what makes sailing exciting is all the different boats. And I love to see and sail on different boats and get that experience. And if you didn't have a handicap for them, you wouldn't be able to race them against each other, would you?
No, not at all.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that the other thing that sort of has evolved in our sport, we talk about foiling a lot, but what we are starting to do more and more is more stadium racing, where we're bringing it back in closer, which, despite how it affects the course and the wind, Fritz, you've had a lot of experience at this stuff, is that it involves more people. So I'm for it. But then the other one is now more and more pressure coming on, like they have in Sail GT, where it's just one race decides the winner. Do we have any views on that?
On the one race?
Yep, that one.
On one to pick a winner from three boats? Well, it's the rules. It doesn't really matter as long as everyone's sailing with the same rules. I don't mind it. I mean, watching, you either like it or you don't. So no, I don't have any opinion on it. I know Holty will have an opinion on it.
It's not the racing I generally do, but I think it's it's exciting to see it come down to that. But it doesn't necessarily reward the best sailor, does it? It's as we said about the Paul Elvstrom story. Sometimes the best sailor goes around the windward mark last. So,
I remember the first stadium racing we ever did was in teams racing in Ireland, actually. And we couldn't believe it. They had grandstands. It was in Dunleary. They had grandstands set up around the outside in this little harbour, and it was just unbelievable. You could hear the commentator. He's a Yankee guy. I can't remember his name, but he was excellent. I learnt more while we were racing listening to the Yankee commentator than I did out on the water. He was so good.
Is that right? That's cool. Yeah. I love it. Commentators are the best. They're the most important part of any sailing race.
They are, Jordan. Yeah.
All right, I think we're sort of coming to the natural conclusion of the discussion. Is there anything that from your role as president, or anything else that you want to sort of pitch at all, Holty, or just what's coming up for you as well?
Well, I should say vice president, because Quirky's the president.
I thought you shared president. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Definitely the vice. He's the man who's responsible. I think I have heard a rumor that potentially the Worlds are coming back to South Australia in the not distant future. Yeah. So no, I think the goal is to boost the sport as a whole, and if 5.0s benefit from that as well, that's great. I think just getting more people out sailing and enjoying the water and passing on that experience is really key, and just getting out racing and enjoying people's company and time, especially after the last few years of not doing that.
That's good. It's interesting you said the South Australian thing, because if my colleagues were on the line, like Bicey, BP and I all met through South Australia, and Fritz lives in South Australia, you've got to say, probably one of the best places to go sailing, like it is particularly for a dinghy sailing scene. It is just an amazing piece of water. The only downside to South Australia is the certain death from being eaten by a shark. That's the only risk you run. But
if it's run at Henley, there's a surf also.
Of course, yeah. I knew the Henley thing would come up. But
yeah, I think you Australians are lucky. You have many great venues to choose from.
Probably the greatest sailing venue in the world, and the least known, is a place called Port Vincent, which is on the other side of the Gulf. And Fritz and you will testify, you should do the Worlds there, because Port Vincent is probably the most perfect sailing venue in the history of sailing. Would you agree, Fritz, or you not into it as much as me?
No, I got to say, Garda's probably the best place I've ever sailed in. I know we bring it up a lot. Yeah. They should be paying Jordan.
Yeah.
Vincent's great. It's just warmer.
Yeah.
Flat water, but it's pretty consistent when you go to Garda. It's either no wind or it's blowing 20 plus.
Yeah.
Well, Garda's good for the food afterwards as well.
Indeed. Now, Garda, I do recognise, and in Vincent, you're in a country town in the middle of nowhere. There's one pub, there's one caravan park, there's one sailing club, and it's dead flat water. Everything you need within 100 metres. It is unbelievable. You can't get lost.
Go there.
Hey.
And the wives are happy to go there.
Yeah, that's right. It's beautiful. You can't get lost in that sort of direction. Although, Fritz, I have seen you get lost crossing an intersection, mate. So, just.
Victor Harbour? What?
Yeah, Victor Harbour. That was one of the funniest stories. I'll tell that one another day. But just before we do sign off, we're not going to do the normal outro we do on Barkarati, because my banter mates are not here. But I do want to mention just club events, the Mike Holt Winter One Design Sports Boat Regatta. Barkarati do sponsor the sports boats, because they're just kindred spirits. But I do want to mention, so that's on this weekend right now, so if you want to follow up on that. The thing that we do need to mention, though, and this is for you two, is the week before the 5.0 Worlds in Cork, they've got an event called the Cock of the North being run. Have you guys, can I give you a little bit of rundown on this one and see if there's any interest?
Okay.
The Cock of the North. So Adam McCarthy reached out and he wanted us to. We'll come back to all these letters we got this week on another event, but it takes place in Crosshaven in Cork, July 24th to 29th, just before the 5-0 Worlds, which, as he says, is really just a sideshow in the grand scheme of things compared to the Cock of the North. And it's sailed in national 18s. Now, have you boys ever seen a national 18?
I have, yeah.
They're cool.
Yeah, I reckon.
They're cool looking things, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. The modern ones look pretty fun.
Yeah, pretty fun. And Fritz, what you'll like about them, buddy, imagine a modern Sharpie, like with a 5.0 sort of hull, probably a more modernised 5.0 hull almost, like a flared modern boat, but with 3 crew. It's.
I've got a great name for one of the boats on there. I mean, I looked at a Brian Partridge thing on Facebook, and it's got a picture of a cat there, and the name of the boat is Massive Dong.
Massive Dong, yes. Yeah. That used to be my boat. My wife named it after me.
Oh yeah. She must have a Hubble telescope and bloody glasses, I tell you.
I was just going to say, you don't want to be searching that name at work, do you? Searching for a boat.
That's what Brian Partridge said.
Yeah, Massive Dong. What about boat names, Holty? Is there any rule on boat names?
No, that's definitely an Australian thing. You take that far more seriously than the rest of the world.
Well, Fritz has got some rules, haven't you, Fritz? Like whether you've spoken them or not, I've got some observations about your boat names. So, do you have any conscious rules in your mind, Fritz?
No, I wouldn't think. I'm open to anything. I mean, the best names aren't my names. I mean, the best one I ever heard was Wrigley as a maggot on a hot pot chop. That's an Aussie name. That's an Aussie name.
The sign writer would like the commission for that one.
Yeah. My observation with you, Fritz, is the one word, the least possible number of letters possible.
Yeah. Oh, no, hang on. What about can't get Fritz in Sydney?
Yeah, that's the one exception to the rule, mate, and that was because it was funny. Yeah, unless it was funny.
It's easy to write down when you go and nominate.
Yeah, that's right. Efficiency. Actually, I will tell one story before we sign off, Holty, and you'll probably remember this. It was my observation for the 2007 Worlds in Adelaide. We were sailing out of our home club, and all the American boats had all these systems to make the boat go faster, right? That was my observation. They'd spent ages developing these systems. Our boat had all these systems for de-rigging quicker. Like it was we'd put all our effort into designing the ability to pack the boat up and set up the boat quick. It was just hilarious. Do you remember that, Fritz?
Correct. I just remember you had the jibe stoppers and all that, right? And you had these systems inside the hull and everything. We decided we get a bit of 25 mil PVC and cut a V in it and jam that down there when we were going downwind. It worked just as well, but it wasn't so great when Jordan had to go in the boat to do it.
Yeah. Or when you hit the shark and the board wants to come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, not too many sharks.
No. So for those who don't understand, we're talking about the 5.0 has a jibing centreboard, and then downwind you've got to have a little contraption to stop it jibing so you go faster. I think I'm going to do a technology video before the regatta just to show people some of the thoughts because, as I said at the start, if you can sail a 5.0, you can sail any boat because you understand how everything works. You understand rig dynamics, sail dynamics, everything. So I think you're going to say something, Fritz, or you disagree?
No, not at all. I just 5.0, I think, like I said, I think it's every class you learn from.
Yep.
5.0, you just got a lot of things
to learn
in it. Yeah, to learn.
All right. Okay, boys. I think we're good and dusted. I appreciate the time that both of you had to give up. So Fritz, it was, for those that don't know, it was 4:30 in the morning for Fritz to join this, and for Holty it was just a leisurely lunchtime. So you haven't had your lunch yet, mate.
Not yet. No. Get some lunch with me and then hit the mountain bike trails.
Okay, so which trail will you go to, bud? What's the plan?
Well, I'm up in Lake Tahoe, so I've got an abundance of trails here. So
Well,
just
what's
get
the
out and
story
ride.
with 505 sailors in Lake Tahoe? What's the story there?
I think we do have a lot up here. It's the mountain biking and the skiing, probably.
So no 50 sailing. It's just there's a lot of you guys are up there.
Yeah. There's half a dozen of us up here. We keep threatening to take to the lake, but we haven't yet.
Right.
Are you doing uphill bike riding or the downhill where you do some real damage on yourself?
You got to go uphill to go downhill.
But you had any big injuries with it?
Touch wood, no big ones, and
Well,
I'll be taking it easy from now on to the Worlds.
Yeah, right. Be careful.
Yeah.
I used to mountain bike a bit with a group, and I remember we were bombing down a trail. Hey?
Not with trainer wheels, though. That was a fair while ago, Jordan.
Yeah, no, that's right. But we're
Up and down.
well, where I live, Fritz, you know, we've got same sort of trails as you get at Tahoe, like lots of great mountain biking trails. And I was bombing down a hill, and I just swept into this corner, and I tried to cut the apex, and there was a cut off tree branch, like the base of a tree, and my shin caught that as I was going down, and it just completely wiped out, you know, and I'm just lying on the ground, big chunk of my shin out, and I'm sitting there just going, oh my God, you know, the worst injury possible. But I was riding with a guy called Christopher Mullen, who's world superbike champion. And I was sitting there on the ground just going, oh no, and he's just stopped next to me, and I looked up and I've just gone, yeah, this is nothing compared to some of the injuries you would have suffered. I might just shut my mouth.
Soccer player compared to an AFL player.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, we won't talk about the rugby today either, eh?
Oh, I've only seen the first half. Don't tell me it was bad.
No, Ireland beat New Zealand.
Yeah. And Wales beat South Africa. Bad day for the Southern Hemisphere all round.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Oh, probably all Northern Hemisphere refs, I'd suggest.
Probably.
They don't understand the way the game's played up there. All right, well, this has just gone all over the place. A fun episode. I don't know if anyone else will enjoy it, but I certainly did. I appreciate you guys coming on the show, eh?
Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks a lot, Jordan.
Hey, no worries.
Holty, and good luck.
Thank you.
See you, everyone.
Be there.